What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in. But before we get started, do us a favor and subscribe to the channel. Leave a like and enable notifications so you never miss out on a new video. You're going to want to buckle up for this one. This is the Backseat Driver, and today we're going 0 to 60 with Lotus. The year was 1947 when a man named Colin Chapman realized his knack for cars. He was born in the grey and rainy outskirts of London, England in 1929. During his college days at London University, Chapman studied structural engineering, and afterwards he joined the Royal Air Force Reserves. While working in his garage later that year, Chapman modified an old Austin 7 to make it lighter and more responsive. He called this new car the Mark I. He then entered the car in local racing trials and soon accumulated enough money to modify the car even further, calling it the Mark II. In 1951, Chapman began to build a car specifically for road racing. He started building a third car to compete in the 750cc Motor Club Formula. He did all of this while still working his full-time job at British Aluminum. He used the Mark II as a template for his third car, calling it the Mark III. The Mark III was Chapman's first car he ever named Lotus. Have you ever looked at a work of art and wondered why the artist came up with that title? This is one of those situations. No one actually knows why Chapman came up with the name Lotus. Some think it was a tribute to his wife Hazel, whose nickname was Lotus Blossom, but it's still a mystery to this day. To increase competitiveness, Chapman used every advantage he could in the race. He modified everything the regulations allowed, and soon the Mark III started to make a name for itself. It could reach 50 miles per hour in 6.6 seconds and at a top speed of 90. The Mark III's reputation grew, and soon other people wanted the car in their races. So in 1952, Chapman and one of his friends from college, Colin Dare, decided to create a business out of Chapman's hobby. They called the company Lotus Engineering, and 2 years later, Team Lotus was split off from the main company to be dedicated entirely to racing. Things exploded in 1957 when Chapman designed and built the Lotus 7. The Lotus 7 was the epitome of Chapman's philosophy to simplify and then add lightness. It was so good that people started referring to it simply as the 7. Lotus even found a way to avoid the sales tax by selling the car as kits. The 7 was small, light, and powerful, but yet practical enough to be legal on the street. This made commuting to work a breeze, and soon men were forgetting things at the office just so they could make a second trip. Building a 1,200-pound car and then slamming a 1,500cc engine into it was one of the best things Lotus did. It was so popular that Caterham bought the rights to the 7 in '73, and they still make roughly the same car today. Thanks to the success of the 7, Lotus was able to develop the Elite in 1957. Unlike the Chevrolet Corvette, they used fiberglass only for the body panels. The Elite featured a highly innovative fiberglass monocoque construction and also used glass-reinforced plastic for the structure of the car. Lotus's reputation for fast and light cars was upheld with the launch of the 1,700-pound Elite. Even with its 1.2 Coventry Climax straight-4 engine, it was able to achieve impressive performance numbers while still averaging 35 miles to the gallon. Combined with its low weight and impressive fuel economy, the Elite was able to win its class at the 24 Hours of Le Mans 6 times. Team Lotus officially entered Formula One at the Monaco Grand Prix in 1958.
New regulations imposing shorter race distances had encouraged new teams into Formula One. Lotus was one of them, building lighter and smaller cars, but still with the engine in front. The man behind Lotus, Colin Chapman, and his wife Hazel, were there to watch over their drivers Graham Hill and Cliff Allison.
They did alright that year, but in 1960, they switched to the Type 25 and started to win races consistently. By 1963, Lotus had made a name for themselves, as driver Jim Clark won 7 races that season, as well as the F1 World Constructors' Championship. Team Lotus won the Indianapolis 500 a couple years later with their mid-engine car, the Type 38. IndyCar follows Lotus's mid-engine design even today. Over a 15-year period, Lotus had won a total of 79 Grand Prix races and was the first team to achieve 50 Grand Prix race victories. Team Lotus remains one of the most successful racing teams of all time, winning 7 Formula One Constructors titles and 6 Drivers' Championships between 1962 and 1978.
I was saying to some of the guys, it's like when you win the 500, there's so many emotions, so many things coming at you. It's tough to process it all right now, and it'll probably be quite a while before I really truly appreciate, you know, that feeling and what I got to do today. Just from simply driving the car, it's very responsive. You really drive it just with your wrists. You can't help it because there's no space for, you know, like in a modern Indy car, you really got to use your whole body. This thing, you just very much drive it with your fingertips and your wrists, and it responds beautifully. And the noise. Yeah, I think when you see this car was really ahead of its time. You know, obviously Chapman did a great job, the Ford guys with the motor, and then you put Jimmy Clark in the car. You know, even the level of driver talent in that field that day, they were going to have a tough time. So, yeah, he kind of dominated that one, didn't he?
In 1962, Lotus was able to launch their first real production car, the Elan. The Elan had a steel backbone chassis with a fiberglass body. The Elan weighed 1,500 pounds and was powered by a dual overhead cam 1.6-liter engine and featured 4-wheel disc brakes and independent suspension. The car was not built with racing in mind, but due to Lotus's reputation in F1, the Elan soon found its way back on the track. In response, Lotus outfitted the car with more race-focused elements, and eventually came out with a track version of the Elan, the Type 26R. The Type 26 was said to reward smart drivers, being quick and light in the turns and smooth on the straights. The 26 could easily be driven to the limit, and soon was a strong competitor with the Shelby Cobra, earning itself the nickname the Mongoose because of its knack to prey on snakes. Lotus designed their first mid-engine streetcar, the Europa, in 1966. It kept the steel backbone and fiberglass body as the Elan, but was powered by an updated 1.5-liter Renault 16 engine with 4-wheel independent suspension. I admire innovation as much as the next guy, but the Europa wasn't Lotus's best design in my opinion. It's alright from the front, but the rear end needed longer on the whiteboard. Tell us what you think of the Europa in the comment section below. Meanwhile, Team Lotus had a new race car, the Type 49. The 49 sported a new Cosworth DFV V8. If that doesn't spark your interest, the engine itself serves as a structural component for the car. This means that the body and the suspension parts of the car were directly bolted to the engine. Lotus also experimented with wings on the front of the 49 to help with aerodynamics and downforce. In 1968, Lotus won the Formula One World Constructor Championship with the Gold Leaf Type 49 driven by Graham Hill. In 1970, Lotus built the first all-wheel drive F1 car with its revolutionary wedge-shaped Type 72. It has 2 side-mounted radiators, torsion bar suspension, inboard front brakes, and an overhanging rear-mounted wing. The Type 72 won the championship in 1972, and Lotus even improved the winglets on the 72 using the experience they had gained with the 49. The 72 started wearing the very iconic livery of John Player Special in 1972 that has become a very special part of Team Lotus's legacy in F1. In 1978, Lotus brought one last great innovation to the racing world with their new 78 race car. They shaped the car's underside so that the air traveling underneath the car would flow faster than the air flowing over the top. This caused a vacuum effect, which literally sucked the 78 to the track surface, making it even more competitive.
You just kept going straight, wound up the hill.
They even copied a World War II bomber's radiator design on the 78 so that the hot air escaping would pass over the car, creating even more downforce. The Type 78 was exceptional on the racetrack, and other racing teams tried to figure out what made the 78 so successful, but due to most of the modifications being on the underside of the car, they couldn't figure out what made it so special. The 78 came second in the championship of 1977, but won in 78 with Mario Andretti, who also won the Drivers' Championship that year as well. In 1975, Lotus launched the long-overdue mid-engine sports car, the Esprit. The Esprit featured Lotus's classic steel backbone chassis with a fiberglass wedge-shaped design. The Esprit was powered by Lotus's own 907 engine. The 2-liter 4-cylinder engine pumped out 140 horsepower, which helped the car sprint to 60 in 8 seconds, and reached a top speed of 133 miles per hour. Lotus came out with a special edition Esprit in 1980 called the Essex Turbo. It was Lotus's first Esprit to be turbocharged. The car wore the blue, red, and chrome livery of Essex Overseas Petroleum Corporation, Team Lotus' sponsor from 1979 to 1981. Lotus also bumped the power to 210 horsepower, enabling 60 miles per hour to be reached in 6 seconds flat. Everything came crashing down, unfortunately, in the 80s, when Lotus found themselves in serious financial trouble, like most car manufacturers at that time. Production plummeted from 1,200 units per year to a staggering 383. In order to make extra money and reduce the prices of their own cars, Lotus partnered with Toyota to help design the Mark II Supra. For the next couple of years, Lotus made a few cars, but without making much of a profit. In 1986, they launched the Excel, which was really just an updated version of the 1975 Hellcat, and Lotus really didn't sell that many of them. Later that year, Lotus was bought by General Motors. In 1989, Lotus launched the Elan M100 Roadster, the only front-wheel drive Lotus ever. People were excited about the M100, but when it launched, it cost around $40,000. This was a shame because the car was regarded as one of the best handling front-wheel drive cars ever produced.
Can this front-wheel drive Elan overtake the handling character of its classic predecessor? Well, to begin with, the stout, unequal-length wishbone suspension is much more substantial than the old car's double A-arms. Careful tuning has virtually eliminated front-drive torque steer, and the new Elan does indeed produce handling behavior very similar to a rear-drive car. By that we mean that the car approaches neutral behavior, responding quickly to driver inputs and doing exactly what the driver tells it to. Unlike other front-drive performance cars, plow is very mild, and the tail can be precisely coaxed around by lifting off the throttle in a corner. Full use of the throttle produces a response similar to the power-on oversteer that would be experienced in a rear-drive car. The front end points into the corner rather than pushing to the outside. Grip is exceptional. Lotus claims that the Elan is the best handling front-drive car made. In our judgment, they are correct.
Instead, sales went to the much cheaper and more powerful Chevy Corvette and the new Miata. In 1993, GM sold Lotus for $30 million to Romano Artoli, who also owned Bugatti at the time. He quickly realized his mistake and sold Lotus to the Malaysian company Proton. Lotus was revived, however, in 1996, and they launched the new fiberglass Elise with a 1.8-liter four-banger, made 118 horsepower. I know that doesn't sound like much, but the Elise weighed 1,600 pounds and could reach 60 miles per hour in a little over 5 seconds. In 2000, Lotus launched the Exige Hardtop performance version of the Elise. The Exige produced 170 horsepower, or 190 with the track version. Later in 2006, Lotus came out with the Exige S model, which was the supercharged version that made 220 horsepower. The Exige also raced in GT World Challenge America and some other GT race events. In 2009, Lotus came out with the Evora. Though still light, More traditional 3,100-pound weight, 4 seats made the Evora a much more conventional sports car. The Evora was powered by a Toyota 3.5-liter V6 that makes around 300 horsepower, 6-speed or automatic transmission. In 2010, Lotus unveiled the Evora S, which is a supercharged version of the Evora. Evora S bumped the horsepower from 300 to 345 horsepower. In 2019, Lotus introduced the Evora GT just for the American market. GT has the same 3.5-liter supercharged V6, makes 116 horsepower and 317 pound-feet of torque. Evora GT flies to 60 in 3.8 seconds and has an impressive top speed of 184 miles per hour. Lotus is currently working on a hypercar called the Evora to produce 1,970 horsepower. Having all 4 wheels, this car is going to be insane. Can't wait to see what this car will do. Tell us in the comment sections below what your thoughts on Lotus's new hypercar. Over the years, Lotus has made many contributions to the car and racing industry. Many of them I had no idea about. They helped build the LT5 engine for the new C4 Corvette ZR1, helped Toyota build the Mark II Supra, partnered with Nissan to improve the suspension of the new GTR. Tesla even inspired some of their cars off of Lotus's designs. Hennessy used a Lotus Exige for the Venom GT. I hope now you know how big of an impact Lotus has made in the car industry and in racing. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of 0 to 60, and make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content coming soon. I'll see you guys in the next one.